In this video, I'm going to show you how I mic up snare drums. Let's dig in. Now, generally what we're going to do is we're going to mic up the top of the snare and the bottom of the snare. The mics we're going to use is, I'm going to use this G790, which is a specially adapted SM57. This is modified by a company called Granelli. I think they're Italian. Granelli Audio Labs. Excuse my accent. But this is specially adapted. You notice it's got the right angle on it. That's to keep the hi-hats out of the actual mic placement itself. We're going to use that. We're going to use this one on top. On the bottom, we're going to use the trusty SM57. It's a normal, average, everyday SM57. You can use a condenser mic, but that's a bit more advanced because condensers generally will get a lot of bleed coming in from the rest of the kit, especially from the kick and the hi-hats. So when you're first starting out, stick to dynamic mics for now. And then once you've kind of worked out dynamic mics, then I would move on to things like condensers and mic placement for condensers and things like that. The 57s or any adapted 57s or anything like that is a great place to start. So here's the snare that we're going to use for this example. Now, it's probably best that I kind of explain the drum in its constituent parts, as it were. So obviously the very top here, this is called the beta head, okay? So we're going to mic, this is generally mic'd up, it's called the top. And obviously on the bottom here, you have what's called the resonant head, and these are the snares, the snare wires themselves. So that's kind of the drum itself. Now, to start with, what I would suggest you do, especially if you're going into the recording studio, what I'd suggest you do is I would get fresh beta head put on there at least. Okay, if you can do both, great, but it's not the end of the world if you don't get the resonant head, because generally they don't get beaten around so much as the beta heads. The other thing that I would make sure you use is one of these. It's a drum dial. We have them here at the studio. We like to make sure that all the drums are in tune. Now, generally speaking, what we do is I'll tune this to around about between 85 and 90 on the drum dial itself. It really depends on what sound you're going for and what you're looking for. I tend to record a lot of metal and hard rock bands, and a lot of the guitars and stuff are detuned, so everything is down in the low mids kind of area. So this is a great opportunity to put the snare up. I tend to tune the snares up a little bit more, so that they get a bit more crack and they'll cut through that mix better. Because if everything is in those low mids kind of area, you've not got a lot of space to work with. Generally, is a good starting point. Aim for around 85 and work towards 90, depending on how highly pitched you want this drum to be. Mic placement for the top, generally, get a dynamic mic like that. And you hit it and it's like, oh, it's great. But what a lot of engineers don't seem to think about is how you can use your mic placement almost like an EQ. You can EQ this stuff off, okay, just by the mic placement. If you mic towards the center here, you're going to get a darker sound, a deeper sound. And the more you come out, the higher tonality you're going to get. So starting from middle and working your way out really depends on what sort of sound you're going for. What a lot of engineers tend to do is just kind of pop it there or aim it middle, depending what they want and sort of thing. But generally kind of inexperienced engineers will just kind of pop it there and go, oh, that'll do. And then they'll look to sort of sample it off and stuff in the mix. I try to avoid that. I prefer to capture the sound. Sometimes when I get stuff from other studios, I have to sort of sample stuff off, but it really depends on the quality of the recording. All of this for us comes out in pre-production, depending on how dark and how boomy they want the snare to sound. Now, if they want it big, dark and boomy, we're aiming it at the middle. If they want something a bit more snappy, we're coming off to the side a bit more. If you want it really snappy, you go into the shell. The shell is going to be the highest tonality that you can get, okay, off the top anyway. So generally, the more you're in the middle, the boomier sound or the bassier sound you're going to get. But it all comes down to your taste and personal preference. Recording the bottom of the snare, the bottom of the snare drum itself, what we're looking to do is to record the snares. Really, those snare wires that I showed you previously, we're looking to aim directly at those. There's not really a huge amount more you can do with that. You're recording that snare, the snare wire sound. So that's where all the crack and there's this kind of fizz, I suppose, of the snare is going to be. And we tend to use just SM57s. You can use a condenser mic. The issue with using condensers on drums is that you're going to get a lot of bleed, you know, from your kick and from the hi-hats and things like that. Generally, what you're doing is you're looking to try to keep other elements out of the drum sound itself or into the recorded sound itself. So you tend to be kind of up close to the snares just to kind of get that sound. Here's how each mic position sounds. So we're going to start with the underneath, the bottom of the snare drum, just to be a bit different. So what we got here, obviously, is the underneath of the snare. And these here, these are the snare wires themselves. This is what we're looking to record. But what I like to do is try to get it as much in the middle of this as possible. And nice and close. Obviously not so close that it's hitting it or anything like that. And obviously you've also got to be aware that you're going to have hi-hat pedals and kick pedals and stuff like that. Something else to be aware of as you're placing your mics. Kind of set it up as much as possible and then get into it. As much as quite nice because I can actually see from here what I'm doing, which makes a change. Normally I've got to go underneath, but that's quite nicely in there. What we'll do, we'll record it and see how it sounds. Moving on to the top, the beta head, we've got the G790 here, and you noticed it's angled. It's angled like that because you'd have hi-hats sort of sat behind it, and therefore the sound, you'd have less going into there. You can get in behind the hi-hats there. This position is pointed right in the center of the snare drum, so it should be a much deeper, darker sound. And it sounds a little bit like this. Our next placement on top is more towards the rim, so we should be getting a higher pitched sound. In the middle here will be darker as you move, or boomier, I suppose, or bassier. As you move out, the higher the pitch of the snare will become. So this is how it sounds in this position. So our third and final position is our side position. So what we're looking to capture is not just the actual drum itself, but we're trying to capture the shell itself. Now the shell is the most brightest part for you to capture. I suppose what you could do, if you wanted to put a third mic into this, I would put one on the middle here and one on the side here and kind of try to blend the three together. It's probably a little bit unnecessary, to be brutally honest with you. It's kind of adding work and you probably won't get a huge amount of result from it. That's an option for you to do if you'd like. Some engineers do that. This is how this side mic sounds.